Alex Kidd was the unofficial mascot of Sega during their pre-Hedgehog days, figurehead of the Master System, and lover of big levitating bags of money. Sadly, he's barely recognised today, eclipsed by the powerhouse that was and still is Super Mario. This may have something to do with the Master System's poor performance in the United States, due to Nintendo's evil chokehold and fierce market presence, the kind that would get them sued for general overbearing bullying and price fixing. Again, this was most prevalent in the States, but given the quality of most Nintendo titles of the time compared to the competition, almost forgivable. The Master System had fewer classics, but maybe that was just because of its low profile. Being a resident of the United Kingdom, wherein the Master System actually did quite well, Alex Kidd is a character known for the built-in Miracle World game by most gamers over a certain age. Alex was one of the main franchises on the Master System and a respectable one at that. He's a radar-eared child wearing a red jumpsuit with sideburns that rival any 70s footballer. He can jump and use his own brand of martial arts. This basically translates to his punches being good. Good enough to increase his fist to roughly the size of a bus and shatter all but the strongest of red stones.
We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
The game that started the series and one that most Master System adopters had by default. Sega crammed it into your second generation machine and it booted if you didn't have a cartridge bridge in the circuit, or sometimes even if you did. So this would be the Sega Kid's first game, and the nostalgia factor itself may prevent anything bad from coming out. Though this game hasn't aged particularly well. It's still fairly enjoyable in moderation. Alex lacks range on his attacks, which is pretty annoying considering the bad collision detection. Without consuming a power-up firing that allowed you to fire an enemy-splitting projectile across the screen, killing all but ghosts. Going to the menu to get at Alex's inventory was a dangerous thing though, as it meant standing up, walking all the way over to the console and pressing the pause button on the control deck, risking a crash, which with no save system through what is a decent length and challenging game for the time is a brutal experience. Back in the days when a game's story was told in a few throwaway pages within the game's documentation, Alex didn't have much of a character. In-game, the story, which is told through occasional conversations with seemingly random individuals living by boss encounters who oddly have the power to replace the enemy sprites in a cut-paste motion. The text boxes are a typically ugly affair, being huge white on black boxes, with the kind of grammar and storytelling flair of a badly drugged horse that's just been found dead after lying there for 3 whole weeks. This grisly image is also a dead ringer for the presentation of said cutscenes. The tale goes that Alex's brother needs rescuing from the evil Jank the Great, a malicious sadistic bastard of a monarch whose artistic tendencies take form in a unique brand of torture, rock paper scissors, or Jankenpo. From what I can gather, Alex is from the planet Eris. He's been studying a martial art named Shellcore, in the Eternal Mountains, and, bear with me here, seemingly is also the prince. In order to reinstate himself as Prince of Redaxian, Alex must traverse badlands, forests, volcanoes and palaces, battling against Janken's animal friends, breakable rocks and hand-headed henchmen along the way. However, what this comes down to could be described as a modern-day Bloodsport, featuring pixel-perfect platforming and attacking quick-moving enemies that kill you in one hit, even if they so much as scrape our hero's body, who has all the attack range of an amputee ant that's being held against a wall. The combat is limited and tricky, and some of the feats of jumping required put Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels to shame. However, unlike the Lost Levels, these cases are totally unintentional. One case in point would be in the volcano level, where a magical stone lies at the end of a tight corridor in plain sight, the only entry point into the corridor being a drop with a pit of lava at the bottom. With a scarily random success rate of actually dropping into the corridor, most sensible people would probably leave it well alone. There are moments when you can lean back for a bit against the headboard. These usually manifest when Alex procures a vehicle from an obviously substandard shopkeeper. He doesn't even check for his pilot driving license. These surprisingly don't cost too much money and come in motorcycle, speedboat and unusual pedal helicopter varieties. These make the levels they appear in much easier and to a degree less deadly. The cycle propels itself at high speed, ignoring small gaps and destroying any scenery that Alex's normal punch would, including enemy characters, but the vehicle is similarly destroyed by unbreakable blocks. The speedboat is similar to the bike, only enemy collision will destroy it. It has a firing mechanism built in to deal with dangerous fish, however. The helicopter allows flight, unsurprisingly, pump-powered by your thumb. It includes a cannon for firing at birds and blocks, and is the only way of destroying anything with it. Collisions with enemies or rotorblade collisions with any kind of obstacle causes Alex to fall out, usually into a harder course, like underwater. This leads us into the scripted Janken battles, which take place throughout the game. You'll fight each of Jenken's henchmen twice. The first time is a simple match that requires trial and error as they follow their own patterns. The second time, they make it a little harder by not only asking that you best them in rock, paper, scissors, but then challenging you to the death in unarmed and unheaded combat. If you lose the best of 3 Janken, you are turned to stone, so seemingly if you die in the game, then you die for real. The combat section of these 3 cretins is the hard part, which requires a touch of luck and finesse with the slippery controls. The henchmen's heads float around the area following a unique circuit, and Alex has to punch them. Sounds easy. Other bosses featured that don't follow this pattern are much less common and bestial in nature, featuring a very small yet angry bull, and a samurai bear that you have to pummel in the stomach while it readies a fatal strike. The Janken Masters are some of the game's most infuriating moments.
Damn it, I lose.
The worst things about the game are compounded into the last level, and then refined further. What you wind up with is a level design intercepted on its way to the sewerage plant by a brain-dead individual intent on giving you a game over in the closing section. One place that comes to mind is an area where you swim through barely kid-sized passages, with spikes on the top and the bottom, where even scraping them causes instant death. And there's not just one, there's more than enough to strip you of hair faster than Britney Spears after a heavy bender. Just before the end there's a puzzle of sorts that requires you to step on tiles in the correct order. Failing one in the sequence causes instant death, and if you fail to collect a piece of reference material earlier in the game, in these golden days before universal internet, you were shit out of luck. Levels are finished by grabbing a rice ball or a burger at the end of a stage, even underwater or defying Newton by hanging in the air. Most pickups display this otherworldly hovering ability if you destroy the blocks around them, but these pickups are the only way of obtaining currency to spend on the game's limited power-ups and sadly temporary vehicles. The power-ups include the previously mentioned Fire Ring of Death, an A symbol that creates Alex clones which run along the screen like lemmings, obliterating enemies as they go. There's a B symbol too, shockingly, which creates a shield of sorts that's pretty much useless. A mystery gift item that allows you to be invincible for a temporary period, a cane that allows you to float temporarily, and of course extra Alexes that are used to give, well, extra Alexes. It's not a brilliant game by any stretch of the imagination, but a nostalgic journey back to when games were considerably more unforgiving and pulse-pumpingly tense. The music and art are quite memorable though.